In this tutorial, we're going to demonstrate how we can create toolpaths in Design Make Machinist or Cut3D and import them into Cut2D Pro or Desktop. We can then incorporate them into our design, and in this example, we can create a very basic, simple house sign. To get started, you're going to need to head over to designandmake.com and download your free copy of Design Make Machinist. Once you're at designandmake.com, you can just scroll down the page until you see the software button. Click that, and you'll be brought to our Design and Make Machinist download page. From here, you get a brief description of how the software works, a link to download your free Machinist software, also a link to download some free content, and then some videos here that'll help you get a better understanding of how Design and Make Machinist works. In this video, we're not going to go into too much detail, so if you do want to learn more, then these resources are good to have. If you choose to go ahead and download the free content, just click here. This will take you directly to our store, and you'll be presented with the free content that will work in your Design and Make Machinist software. Now, in order to get access to these free projects, you're going to need to set up a free Design and Make account by clicking here and go ahead and sign up. Now, if you want to go farther with your software, of course, you have access to our full store. Just go ahead and click on Shop, and you can go ahead to individual models if you'd like, and have a look around and download any of these pay models, and you can use those in your Machinist software and cut them individually for use in your projects. Once you have Design and Make Machinist downloaded and installed, just simply double click on the icon on your desktop and you'll be presented with this home screen. Now, Design and Make Machinist is set up into 7 easy steps for you to take a 3D model all the way through to saving off toolpaths that run your CNC machine. Now, in our demonstration, we're going to take those toolpaths and not run them directly on our CNC machine, but we're going to import those into Cut2D and use them in conjunction with some of the features of Cut2D. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to load in a model. Now, Design and Make has given us a free fleur-de-lis model for you to use in this demonstration. This isn't available on the Design and Make site for free. It's only through this tutorial that you get this content for free. So let's go ahead and select that and open that up. Now, I've already taken the time to set up the toolpaths in Design and Make Machinist so that we could make this go a little bit faster. If you'd like to go through all the steps one at a time, I highly suggest that you go and watch the video on designandmake.com on how to use Design and Make Machinist. From here, we can flip our models left to right on our x-axis, top to bottom on our y-axis, or we can rotate it if we would like. We can also pan or zoom around the 3D content, or we can choose what material we'd like to view it in. And then we can just go ahead and click Next. Now, like I said, I've already set this up with the proper dimensions that I want, but what you're going to be interested in or really need to pay attention to is that when you create your toolpath in Design and Make Machinist, that toolpath can't be sized in Cut2D. So these dimensions are important. So in our case, we knew the height needed to be 7 inches. The width was scaled automatically for us to 6.528 inches. And the depth we decided was going to be 0.35 of an inch. Our datum is set to the center. Our thickness doesn't matter because we can change that in our Cut2D software. And we want to have a slight gap above our model so that if there's any imperfections in the top of our material, then we're going to go ahead and miss that and not have any flat spots on the top of our model. And it's in inches, so we can go ahead and click Next. Now, this is going to be our roughing pass. And again, we set this all up ahead of time using an end mill that we already have. All of these settings were set to work perfectly fine. And you can see that we've already calculated the toolpath and it looks pretty good. So let's go next. We're going to do the same with our finishing pass. Click Next. We're not going to use a cutout pass because we don't want to cut this out of our final job. We're going to go Next. And then if you want to, we can go ahead and preview our tooling just to make sure it's going to look right in the end. There's our roughing pass. And there's our finishing pass. And if that looks good, we're just going to click on the Next button. And then we have the option of saving out our toolpaths. So instead of saving them individually using a post-processor, we're going to save them off using Save V3M for VCarve Pro and Cut2D. Just click that and you can save that off. Okay, let's go ahead and open up a new session of your software and we're going to create a brand new file. This is going to be a single-sided job, and the width of the job is going to be 10. We're going to make the height 12, and the thickness is going to be 0.75. It's in inches. We're going to zero off our material surface, and for right now we're going to set our datum to the center, but when we do our tooling we're going to move it to the lower left hand side. This will just make laying out the file a little bit easier, and we'll click OK. Now we're going to go right ahead and import in the toolpath that we just saved off from Design Make Machinist. So we're going to go up to File, Import, Import Photo VCarve Machinist or Cut2D Toolpaths. And we'll navigate over to our Importing in 3D Toolpaths tutorial folder, and we'll find the V3M, and we'll open that up. Now right away in our 3D view, we're going to see the toolpaths that we created. So if we take a look at this, you can see them there. And if we tile our views, on our left-hand side we have our 2D view, on the right-hand side we have our 3D view. In the 2D view we have a bitmap representation of the tooling here. This isn't a bitmap representation of the actual relief file that we originally imported in. This is just of the toolpaths themselves. And if you select it, we can actually move this around. So we can position this toolpath wherever we'd like to in our material, which is kind of handy to be able to do, and it makes it a pretty special thing. So if I press F9 again, it'll be back in the center. And now if we take a look at our Toolpaths tab, we pin that down, we'll see that we have those two toolpaths that we created in our Design Make Machinist software. If I go ahead and maximize our 3D view, we can go ahead and turn off our finishing pass. So there's our roughing pass. And then we turn off our roughing pass and turn back on our finishing pass. And there we have it. So that's great. And if we happen to forget what tool you've chosen, we can just go ahead and double click on the toolpath and it will tell us what tool we have here and that we've used. Let's just close that down. Look straight back down on this again. And then let's bring back up our tile view so we can work in our 2D view. Now our next step is we're actually going to create an ellipse to put our fleur-de-lis on. So we're going to go over and choose our Draw Ellipse tool. And the anchor point is going to be in the center of our job space. And we are going to make the width of our ellipse 8 inches and the height is going to be 10. And we'll click Create. And that'll show up right in the middle of our job space. So that's perfect. And we're going to use this vector as our profile cut and also to define the space between our toolpath that we created in Design Make Machinist and the border of our sign so that we can machine out the extra material that's in here. And we're going to need a little bit of text to add to our sign, maybe with a number or with a last name. So we're going to go over to our Draw Text tool. And we're going to type in a house number. So 1862 will be perfect. We're going to use a TrueType font, and you can pick whatever font you'd like, but I really prefer the Trebuchet MS font, but this will work with pretty much any font that you may have. You're going to want to test it to make sure that you can actually, it'll actually tool properly when you cut it. So you might need to change back and forth between a few fonts to find out one that fits. But this one does work quite well. I don't want it to be bold or italic. I want it to be centered, and 1.5 is a good height for it. I want to make sure my anchor point is set to 0, 0. That'll put it right in the middle of our job, and I'm going to press close, and that's great. Now we're going to need to move it up a little bit. So let's select it again so we can see our sizing handles and click on the middle one and hold down our Alt key, and we're going to drag it up to the top. Now, I don't have enough room at the top right now to fit my text, so I'm going to need to move the fleur-de-lis down. So I could either just do it by selecting it and dragging it, but in this case, I know how far I want to move it. So I'm going to go over and use the Move Selected Objects tool. We're going to move it relative to its own center point, and we're going to make it -1 inch. Click Apply, and then close that. And now it's where I'd like it to be. Now I can select our text, and it looks okay. If I use my cursor keys, I can nudge it down into place there, and that would be okay if I liked it nice and straight, but I'd like to actually put it on a bit of a curve. And one of the tools that we can use to do that with is right here. It's called Edit Text Spacing with Curve. So if I select that, then my text bounding box will now have a two green handles and then the center handle that I can use to drag it around with. So if I left click on this top green handle, I can pull it up. If I put it back in its straight position, I can use the bottom handle and I can pull it down. So that's pretty neat. So let's just go ahead and angle it up. And what I'm looking for is the top of those letters to be a little bit equal outside of my ellipse. That looks pretty good right there. I'm happy with that. Now I'm just not so happy with the spacing that's in between our letters. So using the same tool, if I left click between the numbers, they'll get closer together. If I hold down my shift key while I do that, I can make the space bigger. So in this case, I want to bring these a little bit tighter to the point where it looks pretty even. Yeah, I like that, just like that. That's perfect. So let's go back to our pick tool and select that. And using our cursor keys, I'm just going to nudge that down into position where I think it goes. So I like the distance at the bottom here is nice. This is a good distance, and up here is a great distance too. So I think that looks pretty good. Okay, let's move on and create the tooling to cut this sign. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure we check our material setup. So let's just go in there. Now this is going to be checking to make sure that the actual physical way our CNC machine is set up in real life matches what we have in the software. So right now our material is still 0.75 inches thick. We're going to move our datum down to the bottom left-hand corner. We're going to make sure we zero off our material surface, and we're going to make sure that we change our rapid Z gaps and start and home positions to be safe and appropriate for your machine and any kind of fixturing that you have holding your material down. So you're going to want to check that over and make sure that that's correct. Let's just make this a 1/4 inch, and then we're going to click OK. Now we're going to get a little bit of a nudge here that says that because we moved our datum, XY datum to the bottom left corner, that we need to recalculate our toolpaths. We can say yes, and what will happen is we'll get 2 more little notices that says it can't recalculate imported toolpaths, and that's okay. It doesn't need to. We haven't changed anything with those in particular. So we're going to click OK and then OK again, and everything now should be right. So let's just preview those 2 toolpaths that we already have made. So let's make sure they're both turned on. Let's bring up our preview toolpaths, and then we're going to go ahead and preview all of our toolpaths. And we should see exactly what we have. Now that's great. Now if you remember earlier, I had said that we're going to use this ellipse vector and the boundary of our toolpaths to actually pocket out this extra material that's here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And let's just look straight down on our thing, and let's close down our preview, and let's select our bitmap representation of the toolpaths and also this outside ellipse, holding down our shift key so we have both selected. And we're going to create a pocket toolpath. Now our start depth is going to be at 0, and we're going to cut down 0.4 of an inch. Now if you remember when we set up the fleur-de-lis in Design Make Machinist, the actual shape height of the relief was 0.35, and then we added a little bit of a gap at the top, which was 0.05. So those added together are 0.4. So we're going to put 0.4 in there. We're going to select the tool, and it's going to be a 1/8 inch end mill. So we're going to appear to the 1/8 inch end mill. We're going to check over all of our settings to make sure that they're safe and appropriate for our machine, and they are. So we're just going to select that. If they weren't, we could go into our edit here, and we could edit the parameters right here temporarily for this toolpath, but we don't need to change any of those. Let's just click OK. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure that we choose an offset toolpath strategy. That way it's going to work from the inside out. If there are any tool marks, we'll actually see them, and they'll be radiused around the outside. And I think that would be a nice way to treat this. Typically when I have something that's inside of an oval or a circle shape, or basically a roundish shape, I'll use the offset tooling for that. We're not going to use any pocket allowance. We're not going to do any ramp plunge moves. We're just going to go ahead and call that pocket. And we're going to put in here the 0.125 end mill, and then we'll calculate that. Then we can go ahead and preview our visible toolpaths, and you'll see this is what we'll have when we're all done. That looks pretty good. Now using that small cutter for that means that we have a nice clear boundary around here, and that looks quite nice. I think that looks really, really good. Let's close this down. And now the next thing we're going to want to do is to pocket out the text. So we're going to select the text, and like I had mentioned before, you're going to want to choose a font that you can actually pocket out. So it's something that's kind of straight and beefy, not a whole lot of serifs like a fancy font. And this one here ticks off all those boxes, so that should be great. We're going to go ahead now and do a pocket toolpath. Now we're going to make sure that we start at 0.4 of an inch down, because that's how deep this recess is. And then we're going to go down 0.1 of an inch. We're going to select our tool, and we're going to choose that same one we did a minute ago, which was the 1/8 inch bone, or the 1/8 inch end mill. Select that. And we're not going to use any large area clearance tool. We can use the offset tooling again. I think that'd be very nice. No pocket allowance, no ramp plunge moves, and we'll calculate that. And then we'll take a look and see what we have. Oh, it looks really good. That cleans it up quite nicely. And now the last cut we're going to do is going to be a profile cut to cut out our sign. Let's close down our preview. Let's select the oval or the ellipse, and then we're going to go to our profile toolpath. Now in this case, we're going to start at 0, and we're going to go down the full depth of our material. So we're just going to put Z in there and press equals, and that will tell us what the material thicknesses that we have. Right here we have our show advanced tool path options open. We're going to select a tool, and we may as well just go ahead and use a 1/4 inch end mill for this one. Let's select that. Let's just select edit and just see if we can change any of the parameters that are here. Probably could make this a little bit more of a step down. Let's make it a 1/4 inch step down. We'll click OK. Now we're going to cut on the outside of this line. Now often, if we do this, because we've pocketed out between here and that vector, if we do cut on the outside of this line, then we may have some little fine pieces of wood or material that are sticking up still when we're all done. So what we might want to do is to actually offset our tooling inwards just a little bit, so we can make sure that that is trimmed off. We didn't want to offset our pocket toolpath between the fleur-de-lis and our border, because if we had done that, then it actually would have taken away part of our relief here. So we don't want to do that. So this is the stage where we can take care of that. So we're going to go outside our line. We are going to use an allowance offset of something very small, which is going to be 0.01. No separate last pass. We're going to add in some tabs, and we'll make these 1/4 inch tabs. We'll make them a 1/4 inch thick, so it'll hold it in nicely. And we'll edit our tabs. Now in this case, because it's an oval, we can just go ahead and get the software to put our tabs in for us. We'll say 4, we'll add the tabs in, and it's put them in pretty good spots for what we need. So I'm pretty happy with the location of those. If not, I definitely could move them around manually, or I could delete some out if I wanted to, but I'm pretty happy with that. So let's close that down. And let's give it a name. We're going to call this profile dash cutout dash n 0.25 end mill. And then we'll calculate that. And then we can preview that visible toolpath, and we'll see what we have. I made a slight mistake there, and see how I used a positive offset. So now I do have that fine raised edge. Really what I want to do is go back into my profile, and I need to make this a negative allowance. So let's recalculate that, and let's reset our preview, and let's just preview all of our toolpaths again. And that way we can see exactly what should have happened. And that's one of the main reasons why we go through and we preview all of our tooling, so we can catch mistakes like that before we put it on our machine and run this project. So I'm glad that actually worked out, and that's perfect. So that looks really good. I'm really happy with that. Now we can go ahead and save out our tooling. If you happen to have a tool changer, then of course you could choose the appropriate post processor for that, and you could bundle these all up and just make sure that your tools are numbered appropriately for your tool changer. But in this case, we're using different cutters. So we just save these out one at a time and run them one at a time, or bundle them up if they happen to use the same cutter. And that's great. So you can just go ahead and run those. Let's close that down. Now, like always, at the end of our demonstrations, we should save this off in your tutorials folder. And that way you can go ahead and have a look at this and maybe even change it up or modify it to meet your needs. I hope you enjoyed that. Take some time and make this project your own.